Hello and welcome to Mostly Vintage Cameras. This is a Fujifilm DL 270 zoom. This was also known as a Discovery 270 zoom in America and a Supercardia 270 in the Japanese market. It dates from 1994. It's a relatively low cost, average quality compact camera from the mid-90s. At this time, digital cameras weren't quite good enough for most consumers. The resolutions certainly weren't that great and the prices were quite high. But people could see that digital was going to be the way forward. So people were reluctant to pay a lot of money for a film camera. The one thing they did know they wanted was a zoom lens. And so a lot of cameras from this time will have relatively modest zoom lenses in order to tick the box that says, does it have a zoom lens? Yes, it does. But anyway, let's take a closer look at it, and we'll start by putting a battery in, because that's always handy with these automatic cameras. Battery cover on the side here, it's a little bit stiff, to say the least. The quality of the plastic, well, it's perfectly good, but it's not, let's say, premium. Battery just sits in there. It's a 123A or a DL123A, perfectly common 3-volt camera battery. It does have quite a large viewfinder, which is quite handy, especially for a spectacle wearer. To turn the camera on, there's this little switch just here, and you can see there are two positions in it. There's a little green stud in the middle to stop you getting a second position by accident, and when you turn it down you get the little P appears just above. That is your panorama mode, which we'll talk about later, but by and large it's best avoided. Around the lens we can see Super EBC Fujinon, and that actually does mean something. Electron beam coating was a Fuji technology developed in the 1970s, and it was one of the first sort of electrostatic coatings for lenses where they essentially atomized exotic metals in the air and used electrostatic charge to coat the lens with them. And this is actually a very sharp lens, surprisingly so. It's only a 35-70, but it's a zoom, and that's what people wanted. What people that bought these sorts of cameras may not have realised is the relevance of a maximum aperture, and this is quite modest. It's only f5 to 9.5. So if you're taking pictures with one of these, maybe aim more for the 400 or 800 ASA film rather than a 1 or 200. Anyway, the zoom is operated from the two buttons at the front. One goes out, one goes in, and in use that is surprisingly ergonomic when you've got your fingers just on the front here. They do fall to hand quite nicely. That's pretty much the front of the camera. Going to the back, we have two buttons at the top here. I don't know if the remote control was an accessory sold separately or if it came with it, but there is a remote control available. There is also a self-timer, and then there's a flash control. As we cycle through those buttons, the effect appears in the LCD display. So the first one, we get an arrow next to the self-timer symbol, an arrow next to the remote control symbol, and on the flash button we get the red eye reduction symbol, which looks like a little eyeball, the force flash on, the little lightning strike, very useful for fill-in flash on a sunny day, and then of course the flash off if you don't want to use a flash. So if you sort of rest this on the windowsill of your holiday hotel and use the self-timer, you can get a longer exposure that will capture the lights of the harbour or whatever it might be. Just going back to that red eye reduction mode though, there were typically two types. One would fire a pre-flash, and then the less sophisticated one, shall we say, used an LED lamp. So as I press the button here, the LED light on the front will shine, and then the flash fires and takes the picture. The idea is that that light causes the subject's pupils to contract, so less light goes into the eye and bounces back, having picked up the red tint from the retina. I'm not sure there's it's going to work terribly well on this. I'm not sure if the LED's quite got the power to do that, but it was another box they could tick saying this has a feature. Now I've been a little bit, well, frankly rude about this camera, but it does have one fantastic feature, which I believe Fuji invented or created, and the DL in the DL270 stands for drop-in loading, and the biggest cause of lost photographs on film cameras is loading the film incorrectly. So when you open the camera back, it only opens that far, it won't open any further, and you might be able to see there's a little green marker here. All you need to do is put your film in and make sure your leader goes somewhere close to that green bar. Once you've put the film in, you just snap the back closed, and it then does something else quite cool. It winds all of the film out of the cassette onto the take-up spool, and then as you take each picture, it winds it back into the cassette. So if you were to open the camera back accidentally with the film in, the photographs you've taken will be safely stored in the film cassette, and you've only wasted the blank film. So again, another way that it avoids wasting precious holiday photographs, let's say. And I've got to say, this film loading system on any camera is fantastic. You can forgive almost any shortcomings elsewhere in the camera, because this will get you a photograph. However good a product you have, or however good a camera you have, if you don't get the film loading right, you're not going to get a photograph, and I can't stress that enough. But just for the moment, let's go back to this panorama button. So we've seen when we use it on the front, we get the little the little yellow P turns up. That didn't sound right. So if you open the back, and I'm going to do something that you're not meant to do, I'm going to unhook it. There we go. So as we move the switch to the panorama mode, if I can find it, oh, it's quite stiff, we get these curtains pop in place. And what that does is effectively reduces the amount of film that's exposed. And when you get your film processed, the processing paper, the printing paper, comes on a big spiral or roll, and it's 4 inches wide. So when you take a panoramic picture, it prints it 4 inches wide and 10 inches long. And when you take a normal picture, it prints it 4 inches wide and 6 inches long. So you're actually getting what amounts to a 10:8 enlargement cropped at the top and bottom from just effectively a half frame negative. It means you get grainy big pictures that cost you an extra £1 each. If you have a camera with a panorama mode, maybe use it once or twice, but not anymore, just to see what happens when you get the pictures back. It is quite amusing. I have seen some nice pictures taken like that, but you can take regular pictures, and in this day and age you're probably going to digitize the images anyway, so there's no reason to not take a full frame image and then crop the scan once you've got that. But anyway, I was fortunate enough in the summer to take some pictures with this as I went out for a walk one day. So why don't we take a look at those now. So first up, we've got a fallen branch of a tree. These are not exciting photographs. The first picture was taken at the 70mm end, and as you can see, it really is quite sharp, surprisingly so. It wasn't the sunniest of sunny days, but it was a reasonably nice day. A lot of detail, a lot of mid-tone, not too much vignetting. But then when we move to the 35mm end, we still get a lot of sharpness and a lot of tonal graduation, but we are seeing quite significant vignetting there. Again, you're probably going to digitize pictures you take these days. That can easily be corrected in your editing software if you want to. Picture of a tree here, standing tree, shot against the light clearly. It's handled the exposure surprisingly well. So when you look at the contrast between the leaves and the branches and the sky, it's not losing a lot of detail in the edges of the tree, which is, again, down to the quality of the lens. It's a surprisingly good lens. Not the best lens in the world, but very good for a camera that cost, incidentally, $79 in the US, and I think it was £100 in the UK. So not an expensive camera for the period. Then we've got some sawn timber, or lumber if you're that way inclined. And again, we're seeing nice detail. On the 70mm picture, there is a touch of fill flash used there, just to brighten the image up again. We are talking about an f9.5 lens when you go out to 70. And really, a 70mm f9.5? Not the best. And lastly, we've got a general shot of a landscape, which I thought was just quite nice. It just showed the tonal range quite nicely. Anyway, that's the Fuji DL 270. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Have a good day.